Hello everyone, my name is Dimitri and I'm the developer of InfraNodus, AI-based text network analysis tool that can visualize any discourse as a graph, show you the main concepts inside, how they're connected, reveal high-level ideas and the structural gaps between them so you can use those gaps to generate new ideas and insights based on the existing discourse or on your writing. In this video, I'm going to demonstrate a really exciting new feature that will make your work with InfraNodus much easier, which is this workflow guide that you can see here on the right. And this workflow guide is really interesting because basically it shows you all the steps that you need to perform in order to perform text diagnostics for any discourse. So think of it as a checklist of the action items you need to do in order to study any text. It's very useful if you are writing something or if you're studying an existing discourse, scientific papers, or in general like a market, let's say, or a discourse around a certain topic by generating it through Google search results or AI and so on. So it's useful for all kinds of texts, and I'm going to show you quickly how it works. So first of all, you just open any text that you already have in InfraNodus. In this case, I'm using a description of how InfraNodus works, which I just put online. And I wrote this text and I want to analyze it in order to see what it's about. Maybe I want to remind myself what I wrote, but to kind of look at it also from a critical perspective and to see how I can develop it further. So this is where this workflow is really useful. I open this workflow by clicking on the top right button here, and then I see that I already imported the text, so that's okay. Then the first proposition is to explore text network visualization. So this is the first thing that we always recommend people do with the graph. They just look at it and see if they find something interesting. So here I look at it and I'm like, okay, I see that it's about InfraNodus, text network analysis and visualization. I have another cluster here revealing concepts and underlying ideas. Something on graph meaning and constructs, also some peer-reviewed paper. Okay, so and then AI and how it enhances your thinking process. So this overview gives me a general idea of what this text is about. It's about InfraNodus text network analysis tool, what it does, how it works. Great. I can mark this as completed and move on to the next step. Reveal high-level ideas. Here it explains how I can do that. So I can go to the analytics panel and then click AI. So in the topics and click reveal high-level ideas, or I can just ask it to show it to me. I click show, and what it does is that it performs this action for me to show me how it's done. So here I see that, okay, I have the main ideas are on graph clustering, AI development, discourse mapping, NLP pathways. There are more topics here. If I click here, I will see all of them. Great, so I also see there's something about structural detection and text mining, which is pretty good. Like, it gives me an understanding of what this text is about. If I already know what it's about, it shows me how well the topics that I was interested in are represented. Great. Let's move on, mark it as complete, move on to the next item. Identify relevant and top concepts. So here it asks me to think of the concepts that are the most relevant to this discourse. I can click show. It's going to select them automatically. These are InfraNodus text network graph, and then I can even click here and see in which context they appear. So this is actually the first statement of the text, which is great because it shows me that the first statement contains the main terms of the text, which is also great for Google search engine optimization because Google will think that the most important information is at the top. So it also can be used for creating content and for designing the kind of discourse that will get to the top of search results. Okay, I can also select them manually in the graph, by the way, which is what we encourage you to do, to use the graph itself. And once we do this, this item will also be marked as completed. Actually, this one was marked as completed because we looked at the relations between the items. And what happens here is that we choose some ideas, like, for example, I'm interested in what it says about AI and GPT. Okay, I select these two stuff, then go to the relations panel, and it shows me that the concepts AI and GPT are also connected to text InfraNodus research tool. Okay, great. So then I can also understand a little bit better in which context context I use those two topics. Click it as done, then explore the main topical cluster. So this helps me explore the main topics that exist inside the text a little bit better. If I ask it to show me how it works, you will see here, it will select those topics in the analytics panel. I can also deselect them and explore them one by one. So for example, if I'm interested in NLP pathways, I'm going to click here and see which words I used and also which statements contain those terms. So this gives me a quick overview of a certain topic that was identified in the text. Now it's marked as done because we just did that. Write down your insights. Again, I can, at this point, highly recommend it to write down some ideas that you have. So I click show, it shows me the project notes, and I say like, okay, I can write it in free form. This text is about text network analysis and how InfraNodus can be used for that. It provides information on the methodology used, graph analysis, and the AI. Okay, I save this, and like this I get a nice overview of my reading of the graph. If I don't want to interpret it myself, I can also auto-generate from analytics, and what happens here is that it just copies and pastes all the insights from the analytics panel. So this is great. If you want like a quick report on any text, you can just use this feature, and it's going to generate for you a list of the main concepts, the main topics, structural gaps, so what's missing inside the text, and so on, even top relations. So this is a super useful feature. Highly recommend to use it. Then zoom in on every topic. So at this point, the system proposes us to change focus, and this is one of the features of InfraNodus, that it's always guiding you through a combination of a change in scale of your perception and also intent. So at the point before, we were kind of zooming out and looking at the text as an overview. Now we're going to zoom in. And we've already done it actually, because we visualized the text and showed the whole structure here, revealed the main ideas, but then when we clicked on those concepts, this is when we zoomed in. Then we zoomed out again to look at the topical clusters, and now we're zooming back in again. So it's really guiding you through information where it's proposing you to constantly zoom in and zoom out, so you always have an overview, but you also don't lose track of the specifics. And at the same time, it's also guiding you to alternate between exploring something and focusing on something. So, you know, walking around the text with a certain purpose, but also sometimes opening up and seeing where it will bring you. And if you combine these two approaches, you get a high degree of variability in how you perceive your text, and it will help you open multiple perspectives of reading it and also understanding your own discourse or any other discourse much better, removing cognitive bias or any sort of preconceptions you have about it. And also just giving you a really good general overview. So here we're zooming into one of the topics on graph clustering. So these are some really specific technical explanations of, you know, how it works. And if I click those terms, I can see in which context they're used. So I understand a little bit better that this is the technical part of the discourse. And for instance, I see it's the main one. And the nice insight that I can get here is that maybe I didn't want it to be so prominent and so important in this text, because I just wanted to give a general introduction of how InfraNodus works. But this one comes up as quite a prominent one. So it means that I added a lot of technical details, which I tend to do anyway. So this is also feedback for me to maybe rewrite this text. I can even write it here and make it less technical, focusing more on what it can do and what kind of results it can achieve. It's just a little note for myself, but I'm saving it here anyway, because I can use it later to generate new content. Mark it as done, as completed, move on. Locate discourse entrance point. This is a super interesting feature. Not many of you know it, because we see that people are not really using it that much, but it's great. In fact, it's here, gap insights, and what happens here is that we identify the concepts that have a high influence by frequency ratio. And what that means is that those are influential concepts, but they don't appear so frequently in the text. If we make an analogy with the social networks, these would be the people that know the most important groups, but they don't hang out that much. So they're really good entry points because they're not overloaded with information, and we can use them to enter into this discourse. So for example, here, you can actually choose to highlight them. They will be highlighted on the graph. And as you can see, they're often at the periphery, which is also like an easier entrance point into this discourse. So for example, that means if we wanted to understand this discourse, or maybe even to embed our own perspective on this discourse, these are the points that we would enter. And it's actually quite funny because here it's proposing us to think of the of the Nodus Labs page on Google Scholar. So this is our lab and the research of the lab. So this is interesting because it's important, but it's not so prominent in this text, which means if you want to study it a little bit more, this is a great point to start because you really then get to all the papers that we wrote on how InfraNodus works. But at the same time, if you wanted to write to us, then probably you would also want to write something about the research that we make, because then it would make the exchange more meaningful and much more detailed because you would already have the references you need. So you see it can be used in both ways. Then this is my name here. It's funny it identified it as an entrance point. Great. Always good to be personal with things. And also text analysis and text mining, which is great because I know that when I was writing this text, I was focusing more on how InfraNodus works, but not so much on how it compares to other text mining algorithms. So this is actually a good idea for me to write down, that focus more on other text mining algorithms and how InfraNodus compares to them. Great. So I'm adding this as a note that I can use later to generate or to modify this content. Reveal the structural gaps. So this you probably already know. This is a really great feature that allows you to see the two topics that could be better connected and that are not yet connected. Here it identified those two topics on discourse mapping and NLP pathways. And you can either look at this gap and generate some ideas yourself, or use the built-in AI to do that. And the way that it works is really great because basically it looks at the structure of the discourse, detects the two topics that are distinct from one another, which means that they are relevant to the discourse, but they're not yet very well connected. And then it proposes you to think of the connection between them, which is great because you will be connecting the stuff that are relevant, but in a way that was not done before. And this is almost a guarantee that you will have a really interesting idea as a result. I click on Insight Question here to use GPT-3 AI to help me generate this content. So for example, how NLP can be used to derive meaning, insight, and reveal high-level ideas, high-level underlying narrative structures in data circulation. Then what interactive pathways and data circulation can NLP provide to derive meaning, insight. So here it's more focusing on how NLP, natural language processing, can be used to underlie narrative structures, perhaps. And this is great because I didn't write about it so much in this text, but InfraNodus has this feature. So it also gives me an idea to expand a little bit more on that subject, how InfraNodus can actually be used to study the discourse structure, the bias inside, whether there is a certain degree of variability inside, whether it's coherent or not. So I should probably also make a note on the subject. So as you can see, I'm studying this discourse. I'm performing diagnostics on this text, but it's also giving me ideas as I go along. Write more about the structural analysis. Save this into the graph. By the way, if you don't like to have questions thrown at you, you can also generate ideas already made. I like to use questions to generate them myself, but I know people don't always have all the time. So you can also use GPT-3 AI to generate ideas in relation to this. Great. Then we move on. Mark it as complete. Bridge the structural gaps. This is what we did already by asking those questions or ideas. Saving research questions and insights. We did that when we used the at this panel. If you forget how it works, you can always click show and it's going to demonstrate this panel to you here. And then challenge, ideate, or question with AI. So this is great because basically what it does is that it opens this AI insight panel, and then you have the next advice button, which is proposing you what you could do to the graph and how you could connect the topics that exist inside this text in an interesting way. And then you can use develop, question, challenge, assert, ideate, or even Google to generate some content. So for example, I want to challenge this. And GPT-3 is going to generate an idea that would challenge these two topics now for me. Okay, so it says it's too broad and that it's quite general also, and it doesn't go too specific into the NLP part. So this could also be like a nice criticism for me to develop this discourse further. I could also change the module and just create like an innovative idea if I'm more interested in being immediately productive, so to say, and then it's going to generate like an interesting idea of how I could develop this whole discourse further. So this is a really good feature and you can use it for quite some time actually. Mark it as complete, move on, reveal underlying ideas to discover new ones. So this is a great next step. Basically what happens here is that you look at the main nodes. Like we already know that this text is talking about text network analysis and InfraNodus. So what we can do is to select them and remove them by clicking this button. We hide them from the graph, or you can also use the button here, reveal underlying ideas. What it does is that it removes those ideas from the graph and shows you what's hiding underneath. And this is a really great way to discover some more specific stuff that are not immediately visible on the surface, right? So we see that there is, if we remove the stuff about InfraNodus and how it's a text network analysis tool that uses graphs, we see that, okay, there's a lot about AI, which is great because I really wanted the subject to be in. So this makes me happy that the content kind of shows through. Then discourse exploration, great. I wanted this to be in. Citation pathway, so something about scientific research, perfect. In fact, it makes me think that the reason why it does that is because I'm referring to a research paper that has information about how InfraNodus works, but maybe I could write more about how InfraNodus could be used for research. So as it's like a highly technical article anyway, I will add this idea, right, how InfraNodus can be used for research. Great. Okay, move on. So as you can see, by the way, you also can do it in a few iterations. So I can remove more ideas and then reveal what's hiding underneath more and more and more as I go along. See, data interpretation, concept exploration, system generation, and then it will help me to also get to the parts of the discourse which are maybe a little bit underdeveloped, which can be super interesting to explore. Then I can get all these ideas back into the graph by clicking this undo button or here. Great. All right, so let's mark it as done. Reiterate steps 214. So basically that's what I just did. I removed the nodes and then I ran the same analysis of the main nodes, of the main concepts and so on. Mark it as complete. Reset the graph. Just to return all the hidden nodes back, which is what I just did. Then import more data. So if you want to import more data into the same graph, you can do it here. Let me just move the video. Here you have the copy and paste field, but you can also use import from other sources and then use any of those sources like news or Google search results or your own text, PDFs, spreadsheets, and import them into the graph to be able to have other content inside. Now, because I had to reload the graph, all the steps are marked as undone, but we were here, import more data, completed, generate AI content. So this is great because you can generate the content here to just use the graph to generate some ideas based on the structure of this text. So If I generate something I like, and I like what I see, here I actually don't like it so much, so I'm going to change the structural gap that it identified. Okay, this is interesting. I can save it to my notes, and you can do it in a few iterations. But basically, what happens is that once you gather all the notes, you go to the finalize your project notes inside, the step before the last one, right? So here it explains what you can do, that you can read through your project notes and summarize them. But you can also use AI summary. So I can summarize my notes now using GPT-3. So it gives me a general idea of the insights I found so far. Will take some time, and then great, here it's also proposing me some kind of like a pitch of InfraNodus. And for those of you who haven't seen, I just clicked this button here, AI summary on the left. It's proposing me like a really nice description of what InfraNodus is about. So I'm probably going to save it to notes just to keep it for maybe some marketing materials or something like that. And then I move on. I can also create an article outline based on these project notes. And maybe this is like an inspiration for another article that I can write on this topic. AI-driven text network analysis with InfraNodus. Great. Actually, that would be like a super nice article. And here it's talking about what is InfraNodus, some technical aspects, AI, discourse mapping, NLP, structural analysis, text mining. So it actually contains all the main ideas I wrote into my notes. And now it's proposing me to write a text about it. So I'm actually also going to save this into the notes, because later I can create an article based on it. You could even copy and paste this to ChatGPT and just ask it to write it for you, which I would never do, but I know some people out there like this approach, so why not? And then finally, when I'm done and I'm finished with everything, I can share my insights. So as I said already, we have them in the project notes here, so I can copy and paste them into some kind of report that provides the complete diagnostics of this text, or I can also make this graph public here and share it with somebody. I can embed it on a website, or I can simply download all the data here in whatever form I want, just an image of the graph or the text statements, or also download all my project notes here and integrate them into some other text that I'm working on. So here is a brief presentation of the new text diagnostics workflow that you can find in InfraNodus if you click on the top right button here. I hope you like this approach. If you have any questions, please leave a comment below to this video, and also subscribe to our channel to be informed about new workflows, because we will be releasing more specific ones. And if you also would like to get in touch with us, please do so through our support portal, support.noduslabs.com. And if you want to try this tool, it's available always online, www.infranodus.com. Thank you very much, and have a nice day.